British Airways once set up a secret department just to destroy a single man's reputation and steal his customers. This was corporate warfare at its most vicious. This is how the empire fought back. Winning a £610,000 lawsuit is sweet, but giving every penny to your staff just to spite your rival is legendary. That's exactly how Richard Branson ended the most bitter fight of his life. In 1984, Richard Branson did something crazy. He launched Virgin Atlantic with just one leased jumbo jet, aiming right at the heart of British Airways. For decades, the national carrier held a suffocating monopoly on the skies, charging whatever they wanted while providing the bare minimum. But I watched as Branson's flashy, customer-first style started winning people over. He wasn't just flying planes. He was selling an experience that the giant couldn't match. Slowly, the underdog began eating away at their profits, and the kings of the sky were starting to sweat. Lord John King wasn't the type of man who shared his toys. As the chairman of British Airways, he saw the Atlantic as his personal pond, and Branson was a bearded nuisance who needed to be drowned. By the autumn of 1990, the tension reached a breaking point when Virgin was awarded those precious landing slots at Heathrow. Lord King was livid. He reportedly told his executives to do something about Branson, whatever it took. That was the birth of a clandestine unit at Gatwick Airport, operating behind locked doors and away from any oversight. They weren't there to improve service. They were there to dismantle Virgin from the inside out. I can tell you the atmosphere in that secret office was cold and ruthless. They were armed with massive budgets and a mandate for destruction. I convinced they could crush the upstart without leaving a single fingerprint behind. They had no idea that their arrogance was their first mistake. The campaign they launched was called Operation Barbara, and it was a masterclass in corporate cruelty. These operatives hacked into the shared booking systems, stealing confidential passenger data to find out exactly who was flying with Virgin. Then they would call those customers, pretending to be Virgin staff, and lying that their flights were canceled. They'd steer those panicked passengers right back to British Airways. It was blatant theft. They even hired private investigators to dig through the trash bins of Branson's employees, looking for any scrap of dirt they could use. They planted fake stories in the newspapers, whispering that Virgin was broke and about to collapse. I've always found these kinds of ruthless business scandals fascinating, and if you do too, you should hit that subscribe button so you don't miss how this war ends. They were trying to suffocate Branson's dream with lies and garbage, and for a while, it actually seemed like their plan was working perfectly. The damage was immediate. I saw the confusion at the gates as passengers arrived for flights that had seemingly vanished. Morale at Virgin plummeted as the rumors of bankruptcy spread like a virus through the press. Employees felt like they were being watched, and they were right. Shadowy investigators were literally stalking their homes and monitoring their mail. When Branson finally tried to fight back in January of 1991, by complaining to the European Commission, the establishment just looked the other way. British Airways was too big, too powerful, and too connected to be bothered by a publicity seeker. Lord King actually laughed at the accusations in public, dismissing the claims of dirty tricks as the desperate cries of a failing businessman. He painted Branson as a paranoid conspiracy theorist, while his own team continued to bleed Virgin dry. It felt like the giant was finally winning, and the system was helping them do it. But they forgot one thing about Branson. He doesn't just give up when he's being bullied. But Richard Branson was not the type to simply fold up his tent and walk away. I watched as he realized that fighting a public relations battle against a massive corporation with deep pockets was a losing game. If he was going to survive, he needed undeniable, hard proof. I remember when he ordered his team to go completely silent and start digging. They initiated a patient, meticulous process of internal auditing and counter-surveillance. We began logging every suspicious phone call, tracing the origin of the passenger cancellations, and secretly documenting the systemic anomalies in the shared booking software. Branson essentially turned his airline into a giant honeypot. He knew that the arrogance of the British Airways operatives would eventually lead them to make a mistake, and they were so confident in their invincibility that they were leaving a digital paper trail behind. Instead of rushing to the press with half-baked accusations, Branson decided to build a legal fortress. He assembled a team of top-tier libel lawyers and forensic accountants, preparing to drag the monopoly out of the shadows and into the harsh light of the British High Court. It was a slow, quiet preparation for a very loud war. In March of 1992, Branson finally made his move. He officially sued British Airways for libel over Lord King's public statements that the dirty tricks claims were nothing more than a manufactured publicity stunt. I can tell you, it was a massive gamble. The British legal system is notoriously expensive, and if Branson lost, the legal fees alone were enough to bankrupt his entire enterprise. But the lawsuit was actually a brilliant strategic maneuver. By filing a formal libel claim, Branson triggered the legal discovery phase. This meant British Airways was legally compelled to hand over internal documents, memos, and computer logs to our legal team. Suddenly, the full horrifying extent of the corporate espionage began to surface. The truth we found was staggering. The documents revealed a coordinated, high-level conspiracy that went far beyond a few rogue employees. It implicated senior management at British Airways, showcasing a systematic, well-funded effort to destroy a competitor through illegal means. The real twist was that British Airways' own internal records were now becoming the very weapons Branson would use to destroy them. The hunters had officially become the hunted, and the sheer volume of evidence was overwhelming. The corporate giant had unknowingly handed over the keys to its own demise. As the legal discovery dragged on through the summer and autumn of 1992, the momentum slowly began to shift. Our legal team scored victory after victory in closed-door hearings, forcing British Airways to produce more and more damning evidence. Each new memo uncovered was another nail in the coffin for the monopoly's defense. We found transcripts of the fake phone calls to passengers. We found invoices from the shadowy private investigators who had been digging through the trash of our colleagues. We even found internal strategy documents outlining exactly how to destabilize Virgin's financial standing in the press. Yet, incredibly, the executives at British Airways remained completely oblivious to the danger they were in. Arrogance clouded their judgment, or they continued to believe that their immense wealth and corporate prestige would somehow shield them from any real consequences. They assumed Branson would eventually run out of money and drop the suit. They laughed in their boardrooms while Branson quietly and methodically tightened the noose, securing airtight testimonies from whistleblowers and compiling a mountain of irrefutable proof that would soon shock the entire business world. Every passing week brought another crucial piece of the puzzle into our hands, setting the stage for an explosive showdown. But just as victory seemed within reach, British Airways launched a vicious counterattack. In April of 1992, they filed a massive countersuit against Virgin Atlantic. They claimed that Branson was the one manipulating the media, and they sought astronomical damages. This legal maneuver threatened to tie the case up in court for years, draining our already strained financial resources. I watched the pressure mount on Branson until it was almost visible. His legal bills were skyrocketing into the millions of pounds, and his investors were growing increasingly nervous about the endless litigation. If the trial dragged on much longer, the sheer cost of fighting the battle might achieve exactly what the Dirty Tricks campaign had set out to do in the first place: bankrupt Virgin Atlantic. It was a terrifying moment for everyone involved. Branson was holding a winning hand of evidence, but he was rapidly running out of the chips needed to stay at the poker table. We all wondered if he would be forced to accept a quiet, inadequate settlement just to keep his planes in the air, or if he would risk everything on a trial that could destroy his entire empire. Staring down the barrel of financial ruin, Richard Branson made a defining choice. He refused to back down. I saw him gather his exhausted team and double down on the legal fight, even mortgaging his own assets to keep the lawsuit alive. He understood that this was no longer just about recovering lost revenue. It was about exposing a rot at the heart of corporate Britain, even if it meant risking everything he had built. He adapted his strategy, pushing aggressively for a swift trial date to force British Airways into a corner before our money ran out. His sheer stubbornness became his greatest weapon. If you are enjoying this story of an underdog refusing to quit, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. It really helps us bring you more unbelievable true stories like this one. Branson's recommitment sent a clear message to his rivals. He was willing to burn his own house down if it meant taking them with him. He was ready to go the distance, no matter the cost to himself or his reputation. By December of 1992, the trial dubbed by the press as the mother of all libel battles was looming. The strategy of applying relentless pressure finally broke the dam. Faced with the undeniable, catastrophic documentary evidence that our lawyers were prepared to present in open court, the bravado of the British Airways executives completely collapsed. They realized that a public trial would not just result in a financial loss. It would mean total corporate disgrace and potential criminal charges for their top directors, including Sir Colin Marshall. In a stunning turn of events, the very executives who had spent years trying to destroy Branson secretly reached out to ask for a meeting. They wanted to settle. The arrogant monopoly, which had once vowed to crush the bearded upstart, was now practically begging for mercy behind closed doors. They offered millions to make the problem go away, but Branson held all the cards. He refused to let them sweep it under the rug with a secret. He demanded that any settlement include a highly public, unreserved admission of guilt. He wasn't just looking for a check. He was looking for a confession. On January 11, 1993, I stood in the High Court and watched the impossible happen. It was the day the trial was set to begin. But instead of a battle, we witnessed a total, spectacular capitulation. In front of a swarm of media cameras, British Airways finally broke. The corporate giant issued a deeply humiliating, unreserved public apology to Richard Branson. It was the kind of moment you dream about when you are the underdog, seeing the bully forced to admit every lie they ever told. But the apology was just the opening act of the poetic justice we had fought so hard for. The court ordered British Airways to pay a record-breaking libel settlement of £610,000. $500,000 of that went directly to Branson himself, while another $110,000 was paid to the airline. And that was not even the most painful part for them. They were also ordered to pay every single penny of our legal costs, which had climbed to a staggering £3 million. It was an unconditional surrender. The Dirty Tricks campaign was stripped bare for the world to see, and the executives who had orchestrated the hacking and the harassment were left publicly shamed. We had taken on one of the most powerful monopolies on earth and won an absolute crushing victory. We proved that, no matter how much money you have, you are not above the law. The fallout for British Airways was swift, severe, and incredibly satisfying to watch. Lord King, the once untouchable chairman, who had personally ordered the campaign to do something about us, was forced to step down far earlier than he ever intended. His long career did not end with a celebration. It ended with his legacy permanently stained by the stench of this scandal. I watched as the airline's public image, something they had spent decades building, fell into absolute tatters. They lost the trust of the British public and the international business community almost overnight. There is a delicious irony in the fact that they spent millions of pounds trying to destroy a competitor, only to end up financing that very competitor's legal defense. They handed us the greatest public relations victory we could have ever imagined. The Dirty Tricks unit at Gatwick was disbanded in disgrace, and the arrogant corporate culture that allowed such rampant illegality to flourish was dragged into the light for intense, humiliating scrutiny. Their desperate attempt to maintain a monopoly had backfired completely. Instead of crushing us, they had cemented our status as a permanent, beloved fixture in the world of global aviation. For those of us at Virgin Atlantic, the victory felt like breathing for the first time in years. But Richard Branson was not finished with his masterclass in leadership. Rather than pocketing the £500,000 personal payout he had won from the settlement, he decided to pull off one final, brilliant maneuver. I remember the look on everyone's faces when he announced he was taking the entire £610,000 and distributing it equally among every single employee. He cheekily called it the BA bonus. It was a stroke of genius. By sharing the spoils of war with the staff who had endured the hacking, the harassment, and the constant stress of the campaign, he healed the company's spirit instantly. The victim had not just survived the attack. We had emerged stronger, more united, awed and fiercely loyal to the man who refused to leave us behind. Looking back, this remains one of the greatest David and Goliath stories in modern business history. It serves as a reminder that money and power cannot always bury the truth, and that arrogant monopolies will eventually engineer their own downfall if they cross the line into corruption. My refusal to be bullied turned a corporate assassination attempt into the very thing that launched us into the stratosphere. If you have enjoyed this journey into the world of ultimate corporate karma, make sure to subscribe and stay with me for more stories of justice served cold. Leave a comment below about which business rivalry you want to see uncovered next. This victory was not just about the money. It was about proving that sometimes the good guys actually win.